Long time ago, elephants had lived in Gujarat. This was a time when they did not have trunks, only big, black, bulgy blobs. Into one of the herds of these elephants was born a calf. This calf was very mischievous and curious. He would ask questions about everything he saw, heard, felt, smelled, tasted, and made it the mission of his life to share his observations with everyone. Once he walked up to his tall aunt ostrich and told her, "Ushtish masi, tamare tail feathers na hairbrush lage che." Ushtish masi gave him one sharp pinch with a claw. Another time, he went up to his tall uncle giraffe and asked him, "Giraffe massa, atle upar spot કેમ છે?" Giraffe Massa gave him one hit with his hoof so that he went belly up in the air and landed on the other side of the field. Sometimes he would say the obvious, like the time he went stealthily up to his sleeping aunt hippopotamus, woke her up and said, "Hippo kaki, tamari aankhe na red che." Oh yeah, like she didn't know. And sometimes he could get personal, like the time he went up to his hairy uncle baboon and asked him, "Baboon kaka, તમે તમારે body hairs count કર્યા?" You, too personal. Anyway, everyone around him, within the herd and outside, got used to him and made peace with his questionings. Once it was Makar Sankranti, and after all the kite flying and undio eating, all the elephants broke out into a garba. They were enjoying rounds and rounds of garba, and they were joined by the elephant's child as well, but there was another kind of garba that was going on in his mind. One question kept going round and round and round and round, threatening to come out any moment, and it did. All of a sudden, everyone heard this squeaky voice coming from the elephant's child, which said, "Eje crocodile chene." And hearing that, everybody stopped in their tracks. And in the silence of that evening, they heard his question. "Dinner ma su khave che?" The matriarch in question, who happened to be the grandmother in this case, called him, "Hey chokra, idhar aa. Come here." "Why are you asking such kind of question when we are doing the garba?" "Really want to know what the crocodile has for dinner?" And at that, his parents, brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, aunts, grandparents, and everybody else in the herd started spanking him. And they spanked him left, right, and center. And once done, let him go. The poor child came back to his den all spanked and cried his heart out in front of his pet bird. "Everybody has spanked me, but I still want to know what the crocodile has for dinner." The pet bird was a very kind, gentle, sympathetic bird. She came up with a solution. She said, "Why don't you go to the great grey-green greasy Shatranju river and find out?" Light bulb! Next day in the morning, the elephant's child started packing. He packed 100 kgs of bananas, 100 kgs of melons, 17 kgs of sugarcane, and then went to his family and said, "Goodbye, I'm off to find the crocodile." And once again they started spanking him. And he said, "Ishkush me, stop please." And they said, "Hey chokra, this is for your good luck." And so the elephant's child politely waited until they were done with all the spanking and then set out on his journey. Very soon he reached the bank of the Shatranju river, and then he realized, "Oh my God, I have never seen a crocodile before. How will I recognize if I see one?" He decided to get some help, and he looked around and found that there was a bicolored rock python sitting on a rock. He went up to him and very politely asked, "Excuse me, have you seen a crocodile around here?" Have I seen a crocodile? Whatever will you ask me next? Excuse me, can you please tell me what he has for dinner? And the python uncoiled himself from the rock on which he was sitting, lifted his scaly tail and started spanking the elephant's child. And the elephant's child thought maybe he was a long lost relative in the Kumbh Mela, from the Kumbh Mela, and so very politely waited until the python was done with all his spanking. And then very respectfully lifted it up, put him around the rock, coiled him around again, and then went about his search. He walked up and down the river, left and right, and couldn't find out and think for himself what to do, and feeling all tired, sat down and was about to cry. Next to him was a log of wood. It was actually not a log of wood, it was the crocodile itself. And the crocodile opened its eyes, looked at the elephant's child, and went. The elephant's child, of course, did not recognize it, but seeing it, went a little closer and asked, "Have you seen a crocodile around here?" And the crocodile said, "Come here, little one. Why do you ask such questions?" And the elephant's child said, "I'm looking for the crocodile." And exactly at that moment, he saw that the crocodile had lifted its tail up from the water, and thinking that it was going to be spanked by that crocodile, the child went back. And the crocodile said, "Come here, little one. I am the crocodile." And so saying, he shed crocodile tears to prove that indeed he was the crocodile. And hearing that, the elephant's child burst into happiness, and he went down on his knees and said, "Oh, you are the one I've been looking for all these days. Can you please tell me what you have for dinner?" And the crocodile looked at the elephant's child and said, "Come here, little one. I'll whisper it in your ears." And so full of excitement, the elephant's child went closer, leant closer to hear the answer. And exactly at that moment, the crocodile bit the nose of the elephant's child and started pulling him close, saying, "I think today I will start with the nose of the elephant's child." Taken by surprise, the elephant's child screamed, "Let go! You're hurting me!" And hearing the scream of the elephant's child, the bicolored rock python came gliding in full speed, and seeing what had happened, exclaimed, "My young friend, if you do not immediately, instantly, at this very moment, pull with all your might, then I am afraid your acquaintance in that large patterned leather ulster will soon jerk you into yonder limpid stream." Hearing that, the elephant's child got worried, and with all the strength in his 4 tiny legs, started pulling himself to free himself from the clutches of the crocodile. And on the other side, the crocodile pulled. But the crocodile pulled the hardest, so that with every pull of the crocodile, the nose of the elephant's child started to stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch until it became 5 feet long. And seeing this, the elephant's child said, "This is too much for me." And hearing that, the bicolored python said, "Rash inexperienced traveler, we will now have to get into some high tension action. Otherwise, in my opinion, that self-propelling man at war with armor-plated upper deck will soon permanently vitiate your future career." And so saying, he knotted himself around the legs of the elephant's child, and together both elephant and python pulled and on the other side, the crocodile pulled. But the python and the elephant's child pulled the hardest. And so, despite all the floundering of the crocodile in the waters, in a very short, quick while, they heard him go backwards and fall into the waters with a loud splash. Relieved at being finally freed, the elephant's child sat down. But before he did anything else, he was polite enough to thank the python first. And after that, he went about gathering lots of cool banana leaves, and when he had sufficient of them, wrapped his nose with them. This puzzled the python, and he asked, "What's that you're doing?" "Shush me, my nose is badly out of shape, waiting for it to shrink." You'll have to wait a really long time for that. Some people just don't know what's good for them. So, for 3 days, the elephant's child waited with his nose wrapped in banana leaves in the hope that it would shrink, but nothing happened. At the end of the 3rd day, a fly came and sat on his shoulder. And before he knew what he was doing, he lifted up his new trunk and swatted it dead. "Advantage one! You couldn't have done that with your old nose. Say, can you eat something now?" said the python. And the elephant's child, before he could think of what next to do, lifted up his trunk, plucked some grass from the ground, and stuffed it inside his mouth. "Advantage two! You couldn't have done that with your old nose. Say, isn't it a little hot here today?" Hearing that, and before he could think of what to do, the elephant's child dipped his trunk into the river, scooped up lots of cool mud, and splashed it over both of them. "Advantage three! You couldn't have done that with your old nose." How about being spanked now? Hearing that, the elephant's child said, "Excuse me! I should not like that at all." How about you spank someone? "I should like that very much indeed." Well, with your new nose, you will find that you can spank anybody, anytime, anywhere. Thrilled at this new discovery and possession, the elephant's child thanked the python once again and set back home. One dark evening, he reached home. But before he went before his family, he was careful enough to coil up his trunk and hide it from them. And then when they met him, they said, "Hey chokra, come here and be spanked for your curiosity." And then he said, "Oh, poo poo! I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking." "I do. I show you." And then he unveiled his trunk. And to prove his point, he spanked 2 of his brothers. And alarmed at this new thing, the elders of his herd said, "Oh, bananas! Where did you learn that trick? And what have you done to your nose?" And the elephant's child said, "Well, the crocodile who lives by the great grey-green greasy Shetranju river gave me this nose when I asked him what he has for dinner." Ooh. And his hairy uncle baboon came closer to inspect what it is, and then said, "It's ugly." And the elephant's child said, "It is, but it's very useful." And to prove his point, he lifted hairy Uncle Baboon and shoved him inside a hornet's nest. And then, to keep proving further, he went on a spree. He plucked out all the feathers from the tails of his ostrich aunt, held his tall Uncle Giraffe by his hind leg and dragged him across the bush, and blew bubbles into the ears of his sleeping aunt Hippopotamus. Seeing this elephant's child have so much fun with his new nose, the other elephants in the herd got super excited. They couldn't wait to get new noses for themselves. So the very next day, all of them set out for the great grey-green greasy Shetranju river to meet the crocodile and borrow new noses from him.